Hi, and welcome to At Home Art Lessons with the Art Groupies, where we develop great art habits. We're going to be working with Persisting Priscilla. She never gives up. She's inspired by an idea that she is engaged, or she cares about, and she's engaged. She tries her best not to give up. Persisting Priscilla. We're going to be working with the art form of weaving, inspired by the Native Americans. Native Americans used weaving to create all kinds of things. They created their clothing, they created their baskets. So weaving was a huge art form in all tribes of the Native Americans. Depending on the tribe and where the tribe lived, depended on what kind of basket they wove. So you need to learn and be familiar with two words, under and over. That's really two words that you need to remember, and whatever you do over, the next step is always under. You're going to need two pieces of paper. The first paper we're going to fold in half, and on the floppy door part of the fold, not on the crease, you're going to take a ruler and you're just going to lay the ruler at the top of the paper, and below the paper, or below the ruler, you're going to make a line. You're going to use that ruler again, and you can line the ruler up with the edge. You're going to draw from the crease up to that line and stop. And you're then going to use the ruler and base the ruler off the line you just drew and draw another line on the other side. And I'm going to do that all the way across. What we're making here in our paper weaving is called the warp. The warp is what we are going to weave through. This is our loom. So this is going to be our warp, what we're going to be weaving through. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to place my scissors on that line from the fold. I'm going to go all the way up and stop. I'm going to do it with each line that I drew. And we are creating what we call a warp, or a loom that we're going to be weaving through. So voila, we open that up and we have a warp, and this is where we're going to be weaving through. The next thing we need is we need the weft. Silly terms, weaving, but we need to make the weft, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to line my ruler up, and I'm using the paper on the horizontal way of the paper, the long way. I'm going to line my ruler up with one edge, and I'm going to draw a line on the other, and I'm going to do that all the way across. I'm making what we call the weft. This is what we are going to weave over and under through the warp. Now you can make your weft all different colored strips of paper, totally up to you. I'm just going to use one color just to make it simple. So all my weft will be the same color. I'm going to again line up that scissor with that line. And I'm going to cut all the way through. Scissors should always be pointed away from you. Thumb should always be up. And the helper hand should move the paper if the paper needs to be moved. You shouldn't move your scissors, you move your hand holding the object that you're cutting. So again, we're making what we call the weft. No matter what you're weaving with, whether you're weaving with pine needles, whether you're weaving with straw, hay, twigs, whatever, you do the same thing, even string. over and under. So I'm going to start with my weft and I'm going to weave through my warp. I'm going to start by going under the warp, then over, under, over, under, over, under, and then I'm going to move this all the way down to the bottom. So everything I did, the next job was the opposite. So under, over, under, over. I'm going to do the same thing with the next one, but I'm going to do the opposite of how I started. I started by going under. The opposite would be going over. And what you create looks like a checkered board. So you can check yourself to make sure it is right. So you should never have anything that is the same in that column. So over, under. So the next one, I do the opposite. I started by going over. I'm going to do the opposite by starting by under. Over, under, over, under, over, and last but not least, under. And when you do this with natural fibers like the straw or the twigs, even string, you don't have to use glue because the actual weave itself will hold everything together, which is kind of cool. So again, I did the opposite. Every job you do, it's always the opposite of what you've already done. So under, over, under, over, under, over, and under. So there we go. We have a nice paper weaving inspired by the Native Americans. I hope you enjoyed creating your paper weaving.